It's honestly unknowable when man first crafted a boat to get across the water. After all, history is revising itself all the time with new artifacts and findings from archaeological sites. But no matter when we began making boats and ships, they've become an integral part of our world's infrastructure. They used to be the way that getting items across the ocean was done, and still are in some respects. But they're also used for transporting people for business and pleasure, and are used in various militaries of the world and more. However, while we do use them often, sometimes people come up with some weird designs for them that kind of boggle the mind. With that being said, here now are the 20 most unusual ships ever caught on camera. Number 20. City of St. Petersburg. Now, I'm not going to actually be talking about the city of St. Petersburg because that would be weird, the video's topic and all. But instead, I'm talking about a Japanese ship that was actually named City of St. Petersburg. It was made in 2010, and people had plenty of things to say about it when it was crafted. After all, it's a massive vessel, and yet it doesn't look like many other ships of its size. For example, it's over 140 meters long and weighs a massive 21,000 tons. And when you look at the front of the ship, you'll notice it has a more airplane-like nose than other ships do. So what's up with that? If you think about planes, cars, trains, and more, they're crafted to be incredibly aerodynamic. After all, if you're able to slice through the air and not have much drag due to wind resistance, you can not only get to a destination faster, but it can drastically lower your fuel consumption. According to a Shipyard Corporation team who built it, the city of St. Petersburg is so aerodynamic, thanks to its cleverly designed front, that it cuts the wind resistance by 50%. But let's be clear, this was not an easy thing to make this ship, as it flew in the face of all modern designs and layouts. However, the team worked through it all, and were able to craft something so special that it won the Ship of the Year award. But let me ask you a question before we move on. Can you guess what the city of St. Petersburg is meant to be as a vessel? The answer is a car transport ship. Not only that, it can carry 2,000 cars at one time, meaning that you can actually make massive deposits of them from one part of the world to another with only one ship. Now it's time for the fancy topic. If the last one didn't look strange enough for you, well, this one will definitely fit the bill. Yes, this is a real vessel that someone claims existed during the days of the Soviet Union. Let's just ignore the very modern setting that it seems to be in, the high-quality resolution, and the people who have clearly photoshopped on the ground and focused just on the ship, whether something like this would even work. To be fair, there are craft out there in the world that are meant to be amphibious or even shift from the air to the water. We see that in certain seaplanes and other specialized craft. The difference between them and this one is that we're meant to believe that this rather large vessel could actually be lifted off the ground with basically a super elongated helicopter propeller. To say that this would work wouldn't only be wrong, but it would go against how helicopters and other craft of this kind actually work. First of all, if you think about a helicopter, the propeller is perched perfectly on the main body of the craft. Then, the helicopter has a thin tail section which helps to balance it out. But if you look at the ship in this picture, it has a steady body type all throughout, and not only would the helicopter-style blade not lift it without serious help, the rest of the ship would literally drag it down. In theory, if there was more than one blade to help lift it, not unlike certain other helicopter types, you could see it getting some liftoff if it was light enough. But does that ship really look all that light in any metric? I don't think so. If the Soviets did try and create something like this, then they were just fooling themselves and wasting a whole lot of resources while trying to craft one. As always, you can comment down below using the hashtag #FancyTopic and let me know your opinion in relation to what I just showed you on the screen. Number 19. The MPI Adventure. If you picture in your mind what you feel is a standard model of ship that's meant to go across the ocean, it probably looks like something as a cruise ship or an ocean liner. How high up does it go into the air though? It's not a trick question. How high does it go? Depending on the vessel, it could be several dozen meters tall, and that's fine as long as the body can support it at its height. But in the case of the ship known as the MPI Adventure, you're going to see something truly out of the ordinary, because not only does it have a massive crane extending into the air for part of its work, there are actually 6 beams placed strategically all throughout the top of the ship to help further balance it. If you look at the craft from a certain angle, you would swear that the beams are just off the ship, but they're not. They're right on top of it by design. So, can you guess what kind of ship this was? I bet you won't guess because of its looks, but it's used to help install wind turbines in Europe. Now, that may seem kind of confusing at first to some of you, but I actually found out that in Europe, they're trying to install numerous wind generators in the ocean itself, and that frees up space on the land for other things. Plus, the ocean does have better access to the wind on most days, so it kinda makes sense that they would want to plop them all around where possible. Obviously, having a ship carrying the massive blades and the engines for the wind turbines is not easy, let alone getting them off the ship to install them, and that's where the MPI Adventure's design comes into play. So yeah, it may look weird, but it's weird with a purpose, and it's technically helping to save the planet as well. Number 18. The Ramform Hyperion. Our next ship has a dual style of weirdness that cannot be ignored. First and foremost, the Ramform Hyperion doesn't look like a standard ship by any kind of metric, thanks to how wide it is compared to the front section. From above, I'm sure that it may look like a triangle riding on the water, which may be cool to see if I'm being honest. But anyways, the other weirdness with this craft that leads to its design is its purpose. The Ramform Hyperion is a vessel that's meant to go and detect seismic readings within the ocean. To put it as simply as possible, the seismic activity in the ocean itself is far more grand than you would expect. The problem is that because of how the ocean carries sound, it can be very difficult to understand the readings that are being collected, or figuring out where the source of the readings come from. While there are plenty of ships that can be used to help geolocate things in the water, they're often too loud, and they give the data a whole lot of noise that has to be sifted through in order for it to be usable. In contrast, the wide base and overall design of the Ramform Hyperion helps eliminate those problems, and more specifically, the wide base lowers the noise generation by the craft. Not to mention, it also creates an incredibly stable base for the ship to go through the water on. To that end, it can run completely silent on the water, further ensuring that the data collection is done as accurately as possible without invoking any noise. Apparently, the instruments that the ship can wield far exceed what other ships can do, so while it may look weird, it is yet another ship that looks weird so that it's able to do its job. Number 17. The Blue Marlin. Now, another ship that's weird for a reason, and this one is likely to blow your mind, because not only does it look like any other ship you've seen before, it's one that does some incredible things that you likely didn't think were possible. First and foremost, the Blue Marlin is a massive vessel. It's over 217 meters long and 42 meters wide. Why does someone need a ship of that size? Well, that's easy. They use it to transport oil rigs and huge ships. Now seriously, look at this picture of the Blue Marlin when it's fully loaded with cargo. Those are some quite huge vessels that are stacked upon one another like they're nothing more than Lego blocks. But why would they do this? Well, that's another easy thing to talk about. Getting massive ships from one place to another can be expensive and time-consuming. Just imagine trying to fulfill an order of ships to another country and having to cross the ocean with them one by one. That would take forever. In contrast, you can use the Blue Marlin to stack up the ships and then literally tug them along in one go. The ship's side and balance ensures that everything stays tight and that none of the ships go topsy-turvy. Another important element here is that to get the ships onto the platform, they don't need a crane, or at least not always. They can actually submerge the ship in part so that the vessels or the rigs can actually be driven onto the platform itself. Many would call this a revolutionary carrier that may drastically change the shipping industry, and it's hard to disagree with them on that. Number 16. Knock Nevis. Now I'm going into the literal deep end to talk about one of the most important ships in the world. Not only talking about any large ship, I'm talking about the largest of the self-propelled ships that are out there right now, and that would be the Knock Nevis. For some context on how massive the ship actually is, It's even bigger than many of the skyscrapers that you likely have in a city near you. In fact, it's larger than things like the Empire State Building, the USS Enterprise, the Pentagon, and more. And it's so heavy that it's a world record holder for the greatest deadweight tonnage at over 564,000 tons. And before you ask, this is a vessel that is used to carry oil products all across the ocean safely, to the extent that it can carry over 4 million barrels within its hold and still go at a good speed through the water, and that's a whole lot of oil. Over the years, it's had many names, including the Seawise Giant, which is why it may look familiar to most of you. No matter what its name may be, it's clear that this ship is special, and it's been in the field for almost 50 years. And as long as it's still seaworthy, it's going to keep getting used no matter what name they decide to attach to it. Number 15. The RP Flip. The last one may not have gotten your weird senses tingling, but this one definitely will, because I'm about to introduce you to the Flip Ship. No, it is not a ship that can do a full-on flip in the water, though that may be weird and absolutely worth watching. Instead, the Flip Ship is one that can go from a horizontal position in the water, like you may see with most ships on this list, and then go into an almost perfectly vertical position in the air. And that is not something you would expect to see a ship do, yet it does it in true form. How it works is that the ship has a special tank in the back end that can be filled with water. So, like most objects full of water, the back end will sink until it balances itself better. In this case, being completely upright or very close to it. And why would you need such a craft to do this? Well, it's for scientific research, more specifically the research of trying to measure wave height and changes in certain conditions. Apparently, standard ships will distort the readings of a wave height due to the ship's body interacting with the water, so by going vertical, they completely eliminate that problem, and it doesn't help it from looking weird. Number 14. The Vanguard. As we've made clear by this point, many vessels sometimes have weird looks to fulfill a task that cannot be done by a normal craft, even massive ones like the Knock Nevis. In the case of the Vanguard, this is yet another semi-submersible ship that is used not only to transport ships, but also to wield massive dry docks and take them to their new homes, either in the ocean or at other land areas. For context, it's so big and balanced that it can carry up to 110,000 tons of weight, so it may be able to carry several ships if it wanted to, or even lift a huge dry dock up and not have to worry about sinking. Then, like the other craft of its kind, when it reaches its destination, it can sink back into the water and drop off its precious cargo without having to strain itself too much. You may think that ships like this would be an impossibility because of certain scientific principles, but as a scientist once said, life finds a way. Number 13. Chikyu. On the surface, the vessel known as the Chikyu doesn't seem to be all that odd. I mean, after all, it has a mostly typical body, a rigging that can be found on several other kinds of ships, and nothing sticks out as being weird. But the key word here is on the surface. If you were to go under the sea, well, you would find that this ship has one clever trick that makes it one of the most useful scientific instruments in the world today. Specifically, it's not just a ship, it's actually a drilling rig. That's right, it has the world's deepest drilling capacity, as it can go up to 7,000 meters below the seafloor to get samples from the Earth. What does it study with these drilling samples? Well, it was crafted in Japan, and so the biggest focus is trying to understand and predict earthquakes much better, as the country has been shaken quite a bit in the last few decades. Now, furthermore, the samples can provide insight into life on the ocean floor and the biosphere that is created within. There are some who may wonder if this could lead to potential ideas of creating human habitats within the ocean, which is not as far-fetched as you may believe. Regardless, the Chikyu is an important vessel, and hopefully more like it are created so that Japan can better protect itself and further understand the nature that surrounds it. Number 12. The Nexans Skagerrak. When you learn about what the Nexans Skagerrak ship does, a thought that might cross your head is, you have a job to do, and that's exactly what it intends to do. This vessel is special because it's a cable-laying ship, and if you don't know, various kinds of power and internet cables are put out not in the air, but in the water. After all, when you're trying to connect the world, you can't let things dangle in the air, as that would get caught or hurt by various elements or objects. By putting it in the water, it is much more safe, but it's also more time-consuming, considering that you're often laying down several kilometers of cable in one shot. And that's where this ship comes into play. This is the ship that's able to carry 7,000 tons of power cable, and for context, when you spool all of that up, it's 28 meters in diameter at times, and it's a whole lot. But it's also one of the most reliable ships to do its job, and that's why it's been in use for decades and will likely continue to be used for this purpose. Number 11. CCS. Now I'll admit with the next ship that even I'm a little weirded out by its purpose, and I'm not exactly sure why someone would need to build a ship just to do this very specific task. But if you have a need, and you need it fulfilled, well, that's when you build something to do it, right? The CCS, which is shorthand for a rather long and tedious name, was a personally crafted vehicle that was meant to do one thing and one thing only: carry liquid hydrogen across the water in massive amounts. How much are you asking though? Well, 40,000 meters cubed per tank, and that's the largest carrying capacity for a ship of its kind in the world. So why does Japan or any other country need that much hydrogen? I really don't know. It's true that there are plenty of uses for hydrogen, including potentially using it for a fuel source, but it's not something that we know of needing extremely large amounts shipped all over the world. Then again, it could be for something of a more serious nature, and thus they didn't spill the tea about its point. No matter what, seeing a ship with those kind of orbs full of hydrogen is not something you get to witness every single day. Number 10. Sans Vitesse. Looking at this ship gives me kind of a headache, so I'm going to focus on what it does instead of why it looks that way, because not even science could answer that in my opinion. The Sans Vitesse is definitely not what you would expect in many respects, not the least of which is that this is actually a floating hotel. No, really, it's a specialized floating hotel that isn't meant for luxury stays, but meant to be used as a special housing unit for oil workers who are out on the ocean. Why would they need such a thing? Well, it would lower the transport costs of taking them to and from the shore, and would likely give them a more rested stay, while also ensuring that they make it to work on time. How nice is that? Number 9. Luick Constellation. From a distance, the Luick Constellation may look less like a ship and more like a makeshift amusement park ride given how everything is set up, and very gear-centric. But in fact, this is a vessel that's designed to lay pipework in the ocean or help to lift heavy objects in the water without a whole lot of issue. In fact, it's so good at what it does that it set a world record for how much pipe that it laid in a short period of time, and that's pretty impressive. Remember that pipes are how we extract oil from the ground, or how we can help transport other fluids from one area to another, and better in the water than on the land at times. So while it may be weird, it does get the job done, and it does it quite quickly. Number 8. The USS Zumwalt. It's honestly a little bit surprising that it took this long to get to a military vessel. A real military vessel at that. After all, many of them have looked odd over the years, as they've tried to accomplish a certain goal, and in the case of the USS Zumwalt, you may notice that it's just a little bit boxier than other ships in the US fleet, or any other fleet for that matter. The reason is multifunctional. Not only does it help to cut through the water, but it also gives more stealth capability. The Zumwalt class was primarily designed to support ground forces and land attacks, in addition to the usual destroyer missions of anti-air, anti-surface, and anti-submarine warfare. It's meant to be one of the most advanced destroyers in the US fleet, and while its construction hasn't been perfect or even cheap, it does seem to have the ability to do its duties well. Number 7. The Aranu 5. The Aranu 5 is another case of a ship not really looking weird at first, but when you dive further into its traits, you're going to see why it's on this list. Specifically, from the outside, it does look like your standard cruise ship. It's got a nice frame, you can see the pool, and other amenities from afar and above, and it seems like a good place to have a nice time. However, it's not really a standard cruise ship, it's more of a hybrid ship that is both a cruise vessel and a cargo ship. To make it kind of more simple, it's meant to haul supplies to the various ports that the cruise ship docks at during its journey. So it's not exactly only bringing people to have fun, it's also giving vital supplies to various communities in order to ensure that they can do what they do. Number 6. The Sea Shadow. The Sea Shadow can be classified as a ship that never was, one of many military experiments that was designed to take technology into a brand new level, but never panning out in the end. In this case, the ship was meant to be a special kind of stealth submarine during the period of the Cold War. The United States was actually afraid of certain Russian submarines sneaking up on them, and so they wanted to design a craft that would be able to sneak up on the USSR in return. The problem was that despite its unique design, it wasn't exactly the most stable ship around. During one of the tests, it was tossed around mightily by the waves, and as such, the ship was actually grounded before it could ever truly become a thing. Number 5. The E-Ship 1. Here's another ship that's designed to transport wind turbine components, and that's its purpose. So we can move on now, right? Well, no. In the case of the E-Ship 1, it was truly designed to transport the various components for wind turbines to certain areas, and the 4 masts that were on top of it were, like the other ship I talked about of this nature, designed to help transport the things and also keep the ship stable while it's out on the high seas. If you can believe it, it even has rotor sails that can be erected to help push the ship even further. In the end, I guess it's all about whatever works. Number 4. The Pioneering Spirit. When you look at the Pioneering Spirit, you may think that this is several ships that have been brought together into one kind of super ship, especially when you look at the front and back of it. Surely enough, there are elements of truth to that. The ship was made in-house by the All Seas Group. They wanted to make a ship that could do many different actions for offshore construction. For example, it could be used to do the installation of certain lifts, or could be used to move heavy pipes all around the place. This massive ship is the largest of its kind, and it's designed to install and remove large oil and gas platforms while also laying subsea pipelines. It measures at 382 meters in length and 124 meters in width, featuring a unique twin-hull design which allows it to straddle platforms for precise and efficient lifting operations. The ship was launched in 2016, and ever since, it's executed numerous high-profile projects and shows off its ability to handle some of the most challenging tasks in the offshore industry. It represents a significant technological advancement, enabling safer, faster, and more cost-effective solutions for the energy sector. And because of its shape, it's rather well balanced on the water and meant to be even more superior than the semi-submersible vessels that we've already talked about. The people that wield this ship are truly capable of doing a lot of things at once. Number 3. The Planet Solar. You may not realize it right now, but the electric boom that's taking place in the car industry is applying to other modes of transportation, and that also includes boats. In fact, in the case of the Planet Solar, this was the world's largest solar-powered boat, and it was made back in 2010. To be clear, it's not just a regular old boat, it's actually a catamaran, and one that's able to travel across the entire globe on just the solar power alone. That's quite impressive. And as you can tell, the top of the catamaran is flat. That's where they put all the solar panels so the ship could get so much solar energy as possible. While it's not exactly feasible for all ships, especially once you crank up the vessel size, it does prove that it can work, and you have to wonder if others are going to try this in the coming years. Number 2. The Innospace Sea Breacher. The last entry was cool in a scientific way, but now I'll show you something that's epic in the fun way. This is the Innospace Sea Breacher, which you can purchase for the low price of $80,000. It's a special semi-submersible personal watercraft that you and your friends can ride in order to both enjoy the sea and everything that's under it. Admittedly, the Sea Breacher can't go all that deep or actually stay that way for very long, but that's not really the point. The point of the ride is to go under the water and then launch high up into the air like a whale or a shark would do. In fact, you can actually customize the Innispace Sea Breacher to look like your favorite aquatic creature. Oh, such fun times. Number 1. Icebreaker ships. Finally, I'll end with a ship that also does a great job of actually doing its job. For several types of ships, even the ones in the military, enduring ice out on the open ocean can be a kind of death sentence. These massive chunks of ice can bend typical steel like nothing and cause a boat to sink by breaching the hull. However, with icebreaker ships, they're the kind that are designed to go into the various ice-filled areas of the world and push through the ice without issue. That's why they have a unique shape overall, as they're supposed to be a kind of wedge that breaks and then pushes away the ice. They have a strengthened hull and mighty powerful engines to further ensure that it has the strength to take the ice out. Well, that's all from the realm of the oceanic ships and all of the great massive vessels that have ever been created. The designs that many would not call logical in terms of form. Which of these ships did you find to be the most outrageous? And perhaps you think that some of the weird looks were actually pretty awesome. Are there any other ships that could have easily made it to this list? Be sure to let me know all about it in the comments section down below. Check out the other cool things that are showing up on the screen, and I will see you next time.